Hello, everyone. Welcome to our session, the inaugural session webinar for the online series Lean Into Your Faith, Meeting Professional Challenges with Spiritual Resources. And my name is Kristen Lundquist. I'm the program director at IGE's Center for Women, Faith, and Leadership here in Washington, D.C. And today we have a wonderful presenter, Dr. Margaret Weber, who's going to be presenting on the power of prayer and meditation, utilizing faith as a tool for life balance. And so just wanted to extend a warm welcome to all of the participants online today. I'm going to provide a short introduction for Dr. Weber. And then I'll explain a little bit about the format of our webinar today. So Dr. Margaret Weber is a senior fellow at IGE's Center for Women, Faith, and Leadership and the chair of CWFL's Advisory Council. Prior to joining IGE, Dr. Weber served as dean and professor of the Graduate School of Education and Psychology at Pepperdine University, as well as serving in leadership positions at Oklahoma State University. While in these positions, Dr. Weber developed global programs, including an international leadership course in the Organizational Leadership Doctoral Program, the Global Leadership Internship in the Social Entrepreneurship and Change Master's Program, and Aliento, the Latino Center for Mental Health, which incorporates therapy in Spanish-speaking countries. She led student groups on educational immersion trips to India with a focus on corporate social responsibility, to Kenya to partner with NGOs for responding to teen addiction in the urban slums, and to Ethiopia to partner with a faith-based group serving in the government projects to educate young children. So lots of experience there. Dr. Weber initiated several projects at Pepperdine University. She founded the Women and Leadership Work-Life Balance Project, which sponsors research on identity, relational style, motivation, and adaptive style. Through this project, Dr. Weber is contributing to the following issues, including health concerns, the role of faith, strategies for balancing work and family, global issues of women in India, Nigeria, Norway, and Iran, and an annual conference that features women and work-life balance to support women and provide role models for the younger generation. Dr. Weber has also served on the board of the Union Rescue Mission in Los Angeles that serves the homeless of that city. She is particularly interested in women and children that have experienced trauma and abuse and find themselves homeless. And GSEP has mental health clinics at URM, Hope Gardens, and Village of Hope, Orange County. During her PhD program from the University of Missouri, her specialization was in education and leadership. She started her career as a teacher in a small rural community in central Illinois, where poverty, public housing, and lack of educational aspirations had a major impact on the opportunities for adolescent children. After earning her doctorate and accepting a faculty position, she continued to incorporate a wide range of social issues, in particular women in the professorate. She has published widely on these topics. She is co-writing a chapter on mentoring for a volume on women and work-life balance. And exciting recent news, Margaret just started a consulting group called Influencing Voices that supports and advocates for women to find and or use their voice for influence. And that can be found at influencingvoices.com. So definitely check out that website as well. Before I turn it over to Dr. Weber, I just want to say a couple of quick notes about the format of our webinar. Unfortunately, due to technical difficulties, Dr. Weber is not able to be up on webcam, but we have a lovely photo of her up at the top right hand of your screen. Obviously, PowerPoint at the left side top of your screen, and then we have our chat function down below. If during the presentation you have a question or a comment for Dr. Weber or any of the other participants, please go ahead and type that into the chat box, and we'll be keeping track of the questions as we go along for Dr. Weber to address at the end of her presentation. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Weber. Thank you, Dr. Weber, for being with us today. We so appreciate you.
Thank you, Kristen. It's a delight to be a part of this series and be a part of kicking it off. What I'd like to do first is to ask each of you if you would just type in a quick introduction. I've just done a quick introduction for myself that just gives a little bit about me. I didn't put anything about family. I'll type that in, but if each of you would just type in something about your work, something about your family, that'd be great. And then I'll know a little bit about those that are participating. After you do that, I wondered if you type in a question or two that you have about issues of life balance, related to faith, related to other aspects of work and family. What kinds of questions might you have? I would like to be sure and try to answer those today as we participate in this session. So as typing, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing a little bit of background about the issues of work and family. One of the questions that often comes up is balance only a women's issue? I think all of us would say it is a women's issue and may affect women more than it does men, but it is a societal issue, isn't it? It's a really important issue that we look at, but always within the media and the things we see about it, it's always projected as a women's issue. The men I talk to talk about having some of the same issues or similar issues to women. They differ a little bit because of the gendered nature of the workplace. Okay, thanks. It's great to see your information, know a little bit about you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the media first. Just in the last couple years, we've seen a lot on work and um, often called work-life balance. I think that's a misnomer because family is a part of life, work is a part of life, but the emphasis is on work being the problem around balance. Harvard Business Review had an article on work versus life. Real Simple had Balanced Life, and then you may have read the book by Sheryl Sandberg, which our series is titled for Lean In. So it's received a lot of media attention. Why is that? And why is it such a problem? In the Harvard Business Review in 2014, they asked males and females what professional success looked like. This may surprise you, but it surprised me. Women said professional success for them was achievement, and their second area was learning. You could see for males, achievement and teamwork were fairly equal. The teamwork surprised me for males. I would have expected that to be part of what females might have said. Feel free to type in if you have questions or comments at any time. They also ask what personal success means. For women and males as well, it was relationships. That was the most important. And you'll notice that then, sort of next and equal, are happiness, balance, meaning. Finance isn't a part of the equation. So these say to us that there are issues that are real for men and women. Yes, it is very encouraging. The relationship piece really surprised me for males, that it was so high. Um, and but most of the others, you can see they're pretty well balanced. For women, I think we receive mixed messages, and particularly when we talk about our faith. Our churches give us mixed messages. Our faith communities give us mixed messages. Um, the media gives us mixed messages. We receive mixed messages from home. This car really illustrated the number of messages that we are bombarded with on a daily basis. Working moms, here's one of the areas where we see that mixed message coming through. Working moms, about half of them say they want to stay home but need the extra income. They feel guilty, and their partners say, you don't spend enough time with the children. Stay at home moms, about half of them want to work but can't afford childcare. They feel guilty, and their partners say, you don't pull your weight. So here we see sort of, it's that yin and yang. And I feel like for women, sometimes it's almost this situation where um, you can't win either way. And this, I think this research study really shows it. This statistic, I think, is really an interesting one and an important one, because I think it gets at the guilt and some of the mixed messages we have as well. Mothers and fathers today are spending more time with their children to 1965, so almost 50 years ago. Do they have more time? No. But what is happening? Women do spend less time cooking and cleaning, and men are spending fewer hours at the office. Are men more involved in sharing household tasks than they were in 1965? Um, those are you that are participating have to answer that for your own situations. Um, I am married. We have two sons that are both grown and four grandchildren now. And my husband has always been very, very involved in uh, all aspects of the home, as well as having a full time career. So I have been extremely blessed, and particularly for individuals of our age, I think he's very unusual. And he's not afraid to admit that he does the laundry or runs the sweeper. Um, he is very willing to talk about that. But this, I think, is encouraging in that uh, um, children see much more of their parents today, are spending more time with them today, even though more women are working outside of the home as compared to 1950, almost double the numbers. So this is a quote that I put together. We have just one life. And it's really important that whatever we do, that we're in the present, we align our choices and have meaningful home and work life centered in the divine. Often I think we see gender inclusion as a negative in our society today, both in the developed and the developing countries. Um, some see it when women are participating equitably in the workforce, that it may affect the utilization of labor, cultural, social, identity understandings. But it's really an important piece that we do align who we are and have meaningfulness and purpose both at home and in our work life. And Kristen mentioned the project that we've worked on. We've interviewed over 600 women. So I'm going to share some of the things from that study as we go through this. The interesting, one of the most interesting findings to me from these women leaders is 80% of them talk about the role of their faith for both their home life and their work life. And we'll talk more about that as we go through the series. One of the areas, too, that I wanted to share with us is Scripture suggests that God knows each one of us intimately. Sometimes in those trials and circumstances that come up, we may even have a question. Has the divine forgotten who we are? No, um, he has not, um, or she has not. In the Hebrew Bible, God tells Jeremiah that he knew him even before he was formed in the womb. And we know in New Testament scripture that um, we are told that the number of hairs on our head is known by God as well. There's a couple other scriptures that I really like. You might take some time and look at either one of these later. Ecclesiastes 3 1 through 8. It talks about there's a time for everything, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to build, and a time to down. So it talks about sort of this wholeness, this life cycle. It's one of my favorite passages in the Bible. And then Colossians 3:12 through 14 is a scripture that for me is really an important one. It talks about the fruits of the Spirit, our faith, grace, humility, love, being able to care about others and to give them what they need. And that scripture I think is so important. I'll share from a colleague. She told me once, she was in administration, and she said, you know, when I struggle with individuals at work, I go at a time no one is at the office, and I go and stand in front of the door of each of the individuals that I'm struggling with some problem with, and I pray for them. And she said, it's hard then to, when you're the next day, if you're working on the problem that you're struggling with, it's hard not to see them in a different light. You see them more in terms of God's child, not as the problem. I've tried that myself several times, and it does change that whole dynamics. I don't know if any of you have tried something like that, but I think Colossians 3 tells us the kind of person that we should be. One of the things, too, for many of us, and I don't know, given some of the places that each of you work, it may be true that you've experienced this as well. I've worked both at a state university and then at a private Christian university. And at the state university, um, I always felt like I was to leave my faith at the door and not really take it with me. However, as I think about Colossians, my faith is always with me. I'm always the person at the core that should be caring, show humility, love, and kindness. So even if we can't overtly practice our faith, and I don't mean that in a way that we're proselytizing within the office, but that we can talk about issues of faith. Um, and it's very helpful just to have those scriptures in your mind and in your heart. Kate, I noticed that you said praying for coworkers, relationships is strained. It does make a difference. So if you haven't tried that, try it in the future. I'm glad to see that some of that you have tried it as well. One of the areas from our study that came out as really core to the women, and that's identity. The research suggests that our identity comes from family, culture, and society. There's really little emphasis on the role of faith in shaping who we are. But I would suggest that faith is an important shaper of each of us, maybe more so for women than men. Some women indicate that faith shapes their values and is at the core of who they are. It gives one purpose and shapes the I am. And it allows us to be um, who, who we truly are. Um, Often, I think we feel like we have to put on a face or be someone because of expectations of others. But we can truly be who we are if we're centered in our faith and have that purpose. Celebrations came through for these women. So many of them talked about really not taking the time to celebrate their identity, their achievements, their awards, their sense of purpose. And I thought it was such a nice thought to really take the time to celebrate being who you are. Too often we spend time finding fault with who we are rather than celebrating that really unique purpose that each one of us has as a child of God. There are two areas of identity that are have come out of our study, the internal and then the external. Um, I talked a little bit about identity on the previous slide. Um, Faith and displays of faith are both internal and external. Worship, um, and I'll share a next slide. Worship is a communal experience and can bring meaning to our lives, whereas prayer, scripture reading, devotions, meditations are often ways that are more internal, where we find meaning for our lives and may find our voice through and our identity through these. But we also have the different forms of worship as well. I think it's really important for us to be able to draw a line for our work, that of our families and our God. It's interesting that a Jewish senator can, at sundown on Friday night, totally disengage and be offline to everyone until sundown on Saturday. We accept that that is fine and his religious freedom. Are we willing to let each other find their Sabbath for themselves, their families, their worship? And how do we model that? On Sunday evenings, when I was dean at Pepperdine University, I liked to prepare for the week, reading emails, reviewing the calendar. However, if I responded to emails on Sunday evening, was I suggesting that others should be working as well? What was my message? My boss, the provost, he told us in advance he would never email us on Sunday unless an emergency. That was his day of connection, of specifically connecting with God and spending time in communal worship as well as his own meditation. And that was his sacred time. And he modeled that well for each one of us. And we knew that that was his day for rest. So the messages that we send by the way in which we do our work can say to other coworkers about what's important to us, whether we revere family time, revere time for our faith, for meditation, for prayer, and those are important components to really think about. The second area after identity that came through from these women were about relational issues, that relationships are really important, friends and friends and friends. Um, and I want to emphasize that a lot. It seems that once we marry, the research would suggest, and we have children, particularly if we have a career, we often find our friendships struggle. So, where do we find the time? Yet we know that friendships lead to healthy lifestyle and longevity of life. A Jewish rabbi shared that it is through other human beings that I sense God is communicating something to me. It is about how well I listen. I loved hearing her say that because it spoke to me in a different way. Do How do I see God in this world? Do I see God only in terms of creation, the environment, nature? Do I see God through other people? Um, and so it really was an interesting thought to me. So we have a need for support systems with our family and our friends, our community, our faith communities, a higher being. Do we have the support system within our faith community of individuals that we can pray with, that we can find meditation with, that we can share with, that we can share some of our struggles? Um, we may have, with colleagues, mentors that support us in the workplace and help us with advancement and navigating the workplace, the psychosocial. And I believe that we also need a mentor for life balance, someone that can mentor us in issues of balance and living an integrated life. How do we deal with child issues, spousal issues, our faith, if we're struggling with things at the office? I had a graduate student who talked about, she was in a psychologist, and on her internship, she was asked to falsify records so that the hospital would get more funding through Medicare. And she said, that just didn't go along with her value system, but she needed the internship to finish it so she could graduate. And she just didn't know what to do. So who does she turn to get the kind of advice that she needs to help her in that workplace to work through it? As it turns out, she came back to some of her professors at the university and asked them for help. And then she actually went to her boss and said, "This is just something I cannot do." And they she was so good at what she did that they gave her other ways to operate within the environment, so she wasn't doing charting, but she knew in the back of her mind that there was illegal stuff going on. um, I'd like to suggest, and Kristen I think is going to put up a better copy of this. The writing on it didn't come through too well. It's a what I would call a friendship map, and you put yourself in the center, label each of the sections as a different arena from which your friendships originate. Like it might be if you're going to school, your family, your house of worship, your professional organizations. And then in each of these areas, place initials of people at each quadrant that serve as your friends, that's your support system. It's really important to have that support system and to find time for the support system. Okay, I'll go to the next slide, Kristen. Thank you. So the third area was adaptive style. And adaptive style really talks about this time of self renewal, um, and how we support each other and share our strengths and share their strengths, um, how we respond to colleagues, how we delegate, how we say no. Delegating tends to be very hard for women. Um, we often feel like we can do it as well or better than someone else, or oh, it takes too much time to show someone, to teach them how to do something. So I'll just go ahead and do it myself. But that can really get us into trouble. We really need to rely on our strength and let others rely on their strengths So we form that larger team of support and help. Um, at home, sometimes, if I'd be making dinner and my husband might be reading the paper after getting home from work, and I would be stewing internally, like, why doesn't he see that I need help? Maybe I just needed to ask. Um, and if I ask, he'd say, sure, how can I help? Sometimes I think we just expect people to see and know that we need help, both at the workplace and at home. We had kind of a fun thing. Our sons didn't always think so, but we had a jar that we had different housekeeping tasks in, and they would draw one out, and that would be their task for the day. Or we called them cleaning parties that we had on the weekends, and we would all draw tasks out of the jar, and that would be our task for cleaning. Um, so it sort of helped, in a way, make it fun. For me, at least, cleaning is not fun. Um, and made it a little bit fun for them. They would always compare who they thought had the worst job, and so we would talk about it. Um, the other area is just say no. We have a hard time saying no. Um, Steve Jobs said that being able to say no helps one focus. Um, and I think it does help one focus and helps keep us centered, realizing what our strengths are and what we can accomplish for ourselves. We aren't super women, so it is important to learn to be able to say no. This little sign says it well, but too often we are the yeses because we think it's expected of us, either by our families or by colleagues. Philippians 4:8 is a nice verse for meditation. Um, Whatever is true, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think on such things. Um, I think sometimes it's very easy for us, both within our work schedules, within just trying to accomplish everything within that 24/7 with technology. It's really hard for us to step back and draw a deep breath. And this is a way, if we just memorize Philippians 4:8 and thought of what are those things that's admirable, that's excellent, both about who we are, the workplace, our families, might help us find that time to just draw that deeper breath that we need to draw. Also, as a part of, of adaptive behavior, are the boundaries. Boundaries around self for relaxation and contemplative time. Kristen, would you share a little bit about your work? I think covers all three of these areas with yoga. Thank you, Kristen. Some of you might share, just type in the box, the chat box, what you use to help you set boundaries, both for yourself, for relaxing, and for contemplative time. What would those look like? Okay, so Kate, you wanted the title and author, so it looks like Kristen's giving that. And if anyone else wants to share, that would be great too. I mentioned this earlier, but um, I like this quote. I don't really know where I got it, but never assume you're the only one who could do it or that can only be done one way. When you open your mind to options, stress goes away. And I see this as God calling us to be open, to open ourselves to others, to open ourselves to new ideas, to come out of who we are and really flower around us, and that we'll have less stress through that process. Um, I like to think about life balance as an integrative approach. It's where boundaries are blurred, that the blending of the personal and professional life. That may not always be possible in some of the work that we do. I think the academy allowed for that for my husband and I and our sons very well. Some other workplaces, it's very, very separate. But where one can blend that personal and professional life. It helps one be real, be whole, and be more open so that you can be more innovative. Kate, you've said you like to journal, and that's a way to regroup. That's a great example. Thanks for sharing that. Um, I sometimes journal, but I journal at kind of my tiredest times, and I need to think about journaling at other times. And I think it'd be really helpful. Um, Life consists of moments. So when you make the moment matter, make it meaningful. So we all have each of these moments within our life, and what can we do to make them the most meaningful and the most rewarding in terms of the purpose that we have in life to illustrate who the divine is, both for ourselves, internally and externally, as well as to others. And I like to think of this that, sometimes we get caught up in the past. Oh, we should have done this differently. Oh, my children needed this. I didn't do it. But if we could just take each moment by moment and look at what we can do, we can build a greater support system in a greater way, I think, to make each moment meaningful. I'm going to end with this slide. I don't know how well this shows up. It looks like one of them is really hard to read. Um, the largest one says meaningfulness. Of the women that we interviewed, over 600 of them, they talked about a meaningful and purposeful life, that really nothing else mattered. I think we hear that when people are close to maybe the deathbed, they say that it doesn't matter how much money they made, what kind of a role they had within the company. It was really the meaningfulness. It was about family, friends, colleagues, um, and having a purpose in life. And so many of the women talked about feeling like they needed to be in a position where they had an active purpose in what they were doing. I think that also comes out of um, being centered around God. Um, that that gives us a special purpose in life. The second area that they talked about were relationships. We talked about those earlier and building that relationship map. I would really encourage each one of you to do that. Think about those individuals that you have relationships with, or maybe should start some relationships with to really help you each day in this integrative life. And then the third one were boundaries. And we talked about those too, is establishing those boundaries. They are very important so that we can have more of the life that we'd like to live for our family, um, for our faith, for our workplace. And I'll just end. Are there questions, comments? You can contact me. I've put my email for the new consulting group I've just formed, and then the website for it, Influencing Voices. I'd be glad to have you look at that. If you're interested to share some, even blog and share those with me, that would be great. So, questions, comments?
Salutations within yoga are really meaningful to me because uh, it's a risen um, downward motion towards the floor and then rising up again. And so for me, very symbolically,
Um, yes, I would say one of the times my husband's parents came to live with us, and his mother was experienced dementia, and our sons at the time were probably 11 and 9. They had to move in together. They weren't very happy about sharing a bedroom. My husband traveled the first week or two that they were with us, and he came home after he'd been traveling. He said, I think this is working out great. And he hadn't been there, and it wasn't working out great for me. Our sons had really gotten upset because I'd asked them to do something. They were kind of at each other because they were rooming together. Um, and it felt like his parents were um, uh, pretty demanding. And so it's a stressful time trying to work full time, come home, get dinner ready, deal with all of the additional work that was kind of on our laps. And I had to call our sons aside, and we went upstairs and we really talked through. So here's the situation. Grandpa and grandma, can they go back home? Well, no, they knew they couldn't do that. Should we put them in some kind of a assisted living facility? No, they didn't think that was right. So talking through it, we talked about really what it was that what was the right thing to do, um, and what would God want us to do. So I think probably two things, and I'm telling that story as an example, is communicate. Often I think we just keep things inside, or we know we're struggling, but we don't talk through what we're struggling with. Sometimes it's hard and it's pretty painful. Um, and then the second one is just praying, asking God for help. For me, that always gives me, um, I know that He may not answer my prayer at the moment. He may not answer it in the way I want Him to. Um, um, but that sense that I have someone to turn to, and that I can just share what's in the moment makes a huge difference for me. So it gets it out, and that makes a really difference. So, a couple questions here: the importance of saying no, and do you have guidelines to know when to say no? Boy, that's a tough one. Um, I do think for work, sometimes we think it's expected of us to say yes. And it's true at home too. You know, family may expect us to say yes. Um, I think that's where having um, sort of a plan for your life of what your priorities are and your goals um, can help you decide what to say no to and what to say yes to. Um, and when you have those priorities, you can kind of ask yourself, does this, if I say yes to this, does it help with these priorities? We did a family mission when our sons were young. Um, and we had it on the refrigerator. So as different activities, different opportunities came along, we would talk about it as a family. Does that help us meet that particular goal? And it was very helpful. And it really helped. Sometimes it seemed like one of our sons, we always were saying no to him. He pushed every boundary and um, every aspect of life that one could have. And it really helped with that because it felt like then we didn't have to say no, that he could come to those conclusions on his own. I don't know if that helps you, but I think that's true at work as well. And sometimes you may say no, and it may not have been the right time to say no, or may not have seemed like the right time because it may be detrimental to either the workplace or the home. But in the long run, it may have been the right thing to do. Um, Kate, you've asked, how did we choose the women? And I'm still interviewing women. I'm particularly right now looking at the issues of faith, gender, and identity formation. Um, so we started with women in leadership roles in the Los Angeles area. We looked at the Orange County magazine they publish once a year, the top 40 women in Orange County. We reached out to them and interviewed them, and then we used a snowballing technique. So we'd ask them, we'd interview a lawyer in a firm, and we'd ask her, did she know others that might be interested in being interviewed? And so we'd interview them. So we got a lot of different individuals that way to interview. And my graduate students were working with me as well. One interviewed women that had cancer and looked at the issues that they dealt with in terms of work family balance. One wanted to look at African American women because she said, I think the issues are different for them than others. So we really used a snowballing effect. And I'm using a similar effect um, with interviewing women around faith and identity formation. So if any of you would like to be interviewed, takes about an hour to do the interview. I would love to have you participate. So you could email me and we could set up a time and do it by telephone. Any other questions or comments? Kristen, I think I'll just turn it back to you. Thank you, Kristen. I enjoyed it and I really appreciated the questions and the comments that were shared.